Okay, welcome back to another game of Clonehead Commander. So, where to start? Yes, we've been gone for too long, and yes, I think we're going to continue to produce content, but as you can see, it's not going to be often. The reason is basically I have not had the same motivation that I previously did, and I can feel myself getting burned out. That, and I've been all about Modern recently and less about EDH. I haven't played Commander in months. Luckily, we have plenty of games in the queue, like this one here, featuring Marath, Will of the Wild, Kiki-Jiki the Mirror Breaker, Kemba, Regent, and Narset, Enlightened something. I forget card names at this point. Let's hope I still remember how these gameplays work though. So let's see. Life totals, I think, 40. And Kiki is going first. The first play of the game is from Narset, who casts Faithless Looting to ditch some big mana spells. Windbrisk Heights from Kemba, who hides away a card. More basics from Kiki and Marath. Wayfarer's Bauble and a Bounce Land from Narset. A sack land and life from Kemba, who then casts Stoneforge Mystic and gets Batterskull. Cultivate from Marath on his turn for some land ramp. Narset flashes back Faithless Looting on his turn to draw more and discard. The Kemba player is able to cast Knight of the White Orchid to fetch up a plains since the Marath player ramped. He holds up mana for Stoneforge Mystic. Kiki-Jiki's first spell of the game is a turn 4 Goblin Settler, who blows up one of Kemba's lands, who responds by putting a Batterskull into play. Then, on Marath's turn, he gets into this game with a Soul Ring and Warstorm Surge, which is pretty good in a Marath deck. Narset ramps and draws cards on his turn. Kemba ramps on his turn as well with Solemn Simulacrum. He's developing a bit of an army here. He starts by attacking Narset for 4 with the lifelinking Germ token. Clone Shell on Kiki-Jiki's turn, putting a creature into exile, but does not trigger a clone count effect. The settler attacks Narset for 1. The Marath player casts Witch Hunt, starting to think this was the original deck, and then randomly gives it away to Kiki-Jiki. Tidings from the Narset player on his turn. Then on Kemba's turn, the only person with a decent creature board right now casts Glorious Anthem, giving all his creatures +1 and also a live Serra Ascendant. He attacks Marath for 5 and Narset for 6, but doesn't gain any life due to the Witch Hunt. On Kiki-Jiki's turn, he continues his land destruction sub-theme by strip mining another one of Kemba's plains, and then casts Ruination to decimate Narset's land base. Kemba and Marath also lose 1 land. Witch Hunt then randomly goes back to its owner, who loses 4 life on his turn. Marath casts his commander, then, mad at Kiki-Jiki, surges his Clone Shell, who flips to reveal Chancellor of the Forge, who produces 2 goblins. Marath then casts another creature I can't see, and then also surges the Chancellor. Narset randomly gets the WH, doesn't seem fair, loses 4 life, and then draws for the turn. The hunt then immediately goes back to the Marath player. Kemba sends the flying Serra Ascendant at Marath and his other creatures at Kiki-Jiki. Kiki blocks the Germ with a token and takes 6 damage, while Marath takes 7 in the air. Shattering Spree on Kiki-Jiki's turn, who blows up all 3 artifacts currently on the field. Batterskull goes back to Kemba's hand in response. Marath loses 4 life on his upkeep from the Witch Hunt, and then attacks Kemba for 6. Marath makes 2 1/1 elementals and shoots both of Kiki-Jiki's 1/1s with his Warstorm Surge. Marath plays another creature and makes another elemental to surge the Stoneforge Mystic, so he can't forge this Batterskull back into play. Maze of Ith from Narset, who's gonna be pretty well set up on defense at this point. Later in the game, Kemba randomly entitles the Witch Hunt, and Kemba puts it back on top of Marath's library with Unexpectedly Absent. A Myria Angel and a land to make a 1/1 flying bird from Kemba. Spawn O Thraxis from Kiki-Jiki and 7 damage to Marath's big unknown creature. Razor Claw Gargantuan deals 5 damage to Kiki's dragon. Marath then sends all of his tokens at Kemba, who blocks 2 and takes 5 damage. Jace, Architect of Not Playable in Modern Anymore, comes into play with a -2, who finds Narset a Plateau and an Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Caged Sun and no attacks from Kemba. Buried Ruin returns Clone Shell to hand, who then comes back into play for Kiki-Jiki. Marath makes a token at the end of turn and shoots Jace for 1. Marath then gets cast for a 3rd time on his next turn, who deals 7 damage to Kemba's Myria Angel. Marath's Warstorm Surge has done about 30 damage so far this game. 6 mana for 30, not too bad. Marath's guys attack other guys, Jace dies, Kemba takes 2, and Marath makes more guys and finishes off the bird token. Dak Faden from Narset, who ticks down to steal all of Kiki-Jiki's poor lone creature. A flurry of creatures from Kemba, including Geist Honored Monk, who can play them all because of the Caged Sun. Thran Operation Dynamo from Kiki-Jiki. Marath attacks, kills Dak, Kemba blocks, but loses his creature to the Marath Storm combo, and Kiki-Jiki takes 3. Marath recasts the Witch Hunt, and it goes straight to Kiki-Jiki. Clone Shell goes at its owner for 2 damage, and then Narset finally casts his first Wrath spell of the game with Akroma's Vengeance, destroying almost everything. Feldon then comes into play under Narset's command from the Clone Shell. Narset has no creatures in his deck, by the way. Narset did set that up pretty well, though, taking the Clone Shell the turn before, knowing that the creature under it would survive the Chroma's Vengeance. Batterskull from Kemba. Kiki-Jiki from Kiki-Jiki. Fires of Yavimaya from Marath. Teferi Planeswalker from Narset, and uses it to untap. Kemba plays a Karoo land with Karoo. Batterskull goes at Marath, and Kemba gains 4 life. At the end of turn, Kiki-Jiki Chaos Warps the Feldon back into his Libraire, who then reveals Keldon Firebombers, again blowing up lands. Then Kiki cages the Firebomber, untaps, and then on his next turn sends both at Teferi to finish it off. A land and a Savage Twister for 2 on Marath's turn, which will kill the Kiki-Jiki. Kiki-Jiki responds by making another Keldon Firebombers just to kill the 4th land there from Marath. Then on his next turn, Kemba attacks, putting Kiki-Jiki down to 5 and him up to 34. Then on his next turn, 4 damage at Narset and 4 life. Solemn Simulacrum from Kiki-Jiki, who finds lands. Narset finally comes out for Narset, and since the other players aren't playing any Wrath effects, they have no way of dealing with her. As a result, Narset quickly runs away with this game. Narset attacks into Beacon of Tomorrows, taking extra turns, getting Narset big enough with effects from Jeskai Ascendancy and Elspeth Knight Errant to finish off the threatening Kemba player. Then, with more and more turns and more Planeswalkers, Narset is able to cast enough spells into the Ascendancy and win with the Fire Breathing on Dragon's Breath to kill both Kiki-Jiki and Marath. Whoa, things sped up pretty quickly there at the end. Quite the game. I think from early on in that game, the Narset player was pretty much written off due to the Ruination, which left him with only 1 land. It wasn't until his Akroma's Vengeance, much later in the game, did he start flexing his muscles and start stabilizing the board. Speaking of Akroma's Vengeance, that really shifted the advantage bars away from both the Kemba and Marath players at that point, who both had dominant board positions. Kiki-Jiki didn't really do too much that game other than resetting things with like the Keldon Firebombers, which helped him a little but didn't have enough staying power. This is really why in a matchup against Narset you really got to go after Narset much harder. I guess the Marath deck had a few modifications to it, but for the most part it was the out-of-the-box Marath deck. Well, that's it for this game. We hope you enjoyed this game of Commander, and we'll probably stick to just doing straight Commander for the meantime, and we'll try to have another game for you at least by sometime next month. Thanks for watching, and stay cool, stay clone, people. Bye.